Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about Tom Paulin's play Seize the Fire, which is a version of Aeschylus's Prometheus Bound. Now, the most interesting thing I think about Paulin's version is how compact it is. So in this particular edition, this is a very oddly printed edition. It's 65 pages, but only the right-hand side has printing on it. The facing pages are blank, and that's all the way through. So, and I don't think it's missing half the text. Having read this edition, I think it's all here. It makes sense the way that it's printed, and it seems like if you were missing 50% of the text, it wouldn't make that much sense. So, it's really closer to 33 pages long. It's an extremely compact version of Prometheus Bound. That being said, Paulin doesn't really diverge that much from the plot of Prometheus Bound. He starts with Prometheus being brought in by Hephaestus, power and violence, and Hephaestus is reluctant to bind Prometheus on the side of this mountain. Power and violence want him dealt with, and so we have that bit. Then the chorus comes on, the chorus and Prometheus interact. Oceanus comes on for a while, they interact, then Oceanus leaves, chorus, Prometheus. Then Io comes in for a little bit, Prometheus tells her what the future holds for her, and then she leaves, chorus and Prometheus, and then Hermes comes on at the end offering to sort of make a deal on behalf of Zeus. So all of the stuff that happens in the Aeschylus version happens in the Paulin version. It's just much more condensed, much quicker, much more efficient in a way. So all of that is there, and that's a really fascinating component of the play. The other thing that Paulin does is he modernizes it in a very subtle way. So, for instance, Zeus becomes a kind of 20th and 21st century strongman dictator paranoid type. So the chorus leader, more specifically, at one point says, "Now every speech that's made, it's vetted by a censor first. Zeus is the eye and center of this state." So we have here this notion of a surveillance state, which is very much a contemporary concern. And then Prometheus says, "He'll call me when he needs me. Far, far in the future, just when his state looks safe, all legal and legitimate, with flags and judges and all that, there will be this strange weekend, part holiday and part disaster. First, all of the fountains in the public squares will switch themselves off. Power will fail, jolt back in spasms. No general, no group of sleek young colonels will pump themselves up. It'll all be secret and anonymous. Tanks on the lawn, news blackouts, locked doors and panic. Those empty, sinister, blocked roads, food shortages and rumors, then martial music on the radio. Come that plot state, and nervous, furtive Zeus will find his way up here." So, in foretelling the future, again, this is something that happens in the Aeschylus version, but here Prometheus is more specific. He's envisioning a sort of military coup, and that idea of tanks rolling onto Zeus's lawn gets repeated a couple more times in the play. So clearly this is a highly mechanized coup. But then the other interesting component is Zeus is accused of trying to rewrite history or to control history. At one point Prometheus says, "Those humans drudged. They'd no history to go on, and they had no future." So again, this is imagining a sort of prehistory for humanity prior to Prometheus arriving as a culture hero, in which he gives us things like writing, fire, agriculture, craftsmanship, etc., etc. But then later, Prometheus says of Zeus, he's fed. This is to the chorus. He's fed you lies. Zeus hijacked both the history and the state we made. So this is an interesting point, this idea that Zeus has hijacked history, because this is something that becomes really significant with especially 20th century dictators. People like Hitler, specifically through Himmler and the SS archaeological programs, tried to rewrite German history. Stalin in the Soviet Union, Mao in the People's Republic of China, Pol Pot in the Khmer Rouge is actually one of the worst examples of this, because Pol Pot's genocide included anyone who knew anything about history, basically. So intellectuals, historians, writers, anybody who knew anything about the Cambodia that was Pol Pot attempted to eliminate, so that he could recreate history the way that he wanted it to be. And we get this implication here that this is what Zeus is doing, that he's creating a history that's not necessarily grounded in what actually occurred, that it's grounded in the political propaganda of Zeus. So, I mean, that's a really interesting component. And it makes a lot of sense, actually, for Paulin, who I think he was born in England, but he was raised in Northern Ireland, and he's basically a Northern Irish playwright. Northern Ireland, at the time that this play premiered, which was in 1989, February 1989, I mean, the Troubles were still going on. So conflict was central to Paulin's world. And so this idea that you have a brutal military leader or brutal sort of political authority that's presenting itself positively would be really quite contemporary for him. And then one of the things that I think is really, really interesting is actually the last line of the play. So I'm going to give you a little bit more than the last line, the last two sentences, which is the last 6 lines. He says, Prometheus says, "See Zeus shaken as these new lights burn and melt his walls. Let Prometheus go out and become one with the democratic light." So this is really interesting because in Aeschylus and in Paulin's version, we have Prometheus as culture hero. Again, I talked about this in my video on Aeschylus's Prometheus Bound. The idea of the culture hero is someone who delivers useful, important knowledge to a civilization. Prometheus sets himself up as that, and in the final moment of this play, he sets himself up as a sort of deliverer of democracy in contrast to Zeus's authoritarian approach, to Zeus's totalitarian regime of censorship and surveillance and attempting to rewrite history. In this version, Prometheus provides the alternative, which is democracy.